Lack of productive conflict is a warning signal. How politeness culture filters out the truth, by Leslie Rohansi. You've likely been in this meeting, and if you're honest, you may have even been running it. You lay out a direction, walk the group through your thinking, and open the floor. A few people nod as you speak. Someone says, "Makes sense." Another adds that they're on board and ready to move forward. The tone is smooth, the discussion feels easy, and nothing in the room signals friction. You leave that conversation reassured that you have alignment. A few weeks later, the energy is different. The work is moving, but not with any real momentum. You find yourself stepping in more than expected, answering questions that shouldn't need your input, and wondering why something that seems so clear is not gaining traction. This is usually the point where leaders turn their attention to execution. They start tightening timelines, increasing check-ins, and stepping in more frequently to keep things moving. It feels like a delivery problem that needs more oversight or clearer direction. But the breakdown did not start in the execution phase. It started earlier, in the meeting itself, when alignment appeared to be present, but was never fully established. What looked like agreement wasn't. It was a group of people making a rapid, often unconscious decision about how to respond in that moment. For some, it may have been about protecting the relationship. For others, it was about not slowing things down, not wanting to challenge too early, or not being certain their perspective would add value. And for some, it was simply easier to agree in the moment and revisit it later, even if that conversation never actually happened. If that sounds familiar, you're in good company. In Canadian workplaces, politeness shapes how people respond in real time, especially when they're unsure how their input will land. It influences what gets said, how it is said, and in many cases, whether it even gets said at all. Over time, that creates a gap between what is expressed in the room and what people are actually thinking. Leaders hear support. Teams experience something more complicated. I recently coached a senior leader who couldn't understand why his teams weren't giving him honest feedback or bringing forward stronger ideas to challenge the status quo. He had been very clear that he wanted input. He said it often and he meant it. From his perspective, the invitation was wide open. From his team's perspective, they saw it differently. He moved quickly in meetings and responded to ideas as they were raised. He tended to build on what he liked and move past what he did not, often without much pause. He often closed discussions as soon as he felt he had enough to make a decision, which happened faster than he realized. None of his behavior was aggressive or dismissive. It was just how he liked to operate. In these conditions he'd created, his team had stopped testing ideas that were not fully formed. They held back perspectives that might have slowed the conversation down. They paid attention to where he seemed to be leaning and aligned themselves accordingly. The meetings stayed smooth, the tone stayed positive, and the appearance of agreement remained intact. From the outside, the issue is easy to spot. From the inside, it's almost invisible. They were operating within it, shaped by it, adapting to it in real time, like fish that have no awareness of the water they're swimming in. People were no longer bringing their full thinking into the room. They were participating, but in a narrower way, contributing, but without the same level of ownership. They were staying engaged enough to keep things moving, while gradually pulling back from conversations that held greater risk. That shift is easy to miss because it does not create obvious disruption. There are no raised voices, no visible conflict, and no obvious signs that something is wrong. Everything continues to look professional and well managed. The cost shows up later, when decisions move forward without the benefit of a broader perspective. Execution starts to stall. Leaders find themselves carrying more of the load than they expected, stepping in to clarify, reinforce, and push things along. At that point, it is tempting to question commitment, engagement, or capability. More often, the issue is access. Access to what people are actually seeing, thinking, and questioning. Access to the ideas that stayed in someone's head because the moment did not feel right to share it. Access to the concerns that were softened beyond being recognizable, or left unsaid altogether. When that access narrows, the quality of thinking narrows with it. This matters even more in the current environment. Canadian organizations are operating with tighter margins, higher expectations, and less room for missteps. Leaders need people who are willing to engage fully, especially when the path forward is not obvious. Politeness, when it goes unchecked, can work against that. So the question shifts. Instead of wondering why people are not speaking up, it would be more useful to ask what they're not responding to in how you lead. Your behavior sets the conditions for how far others are willing to go. When you jump in within seconds of someone speaking, wrap a discussion before others have weighed in, or signal a preferred direction through your tone or follow-up questions, people notice. They constantly read your pace, your reactions, and your follow-through. They notice how quickly you respond to ideas and which ones you stay with. They notice whether a differing perspective changes anything or simply gets set aside. They notice how much space there is to think before the conversation moves on. These signals shape participation far more than any verbal invitation. When people see that their input can influence direction, they lean in. When they don't see that connection, they conserve their effort and contribute in more predictable ways that feel safer. And those conversations, while they may be easier to manage, are ultimately less useful. Leaders who want stronger engagement often focus on saying the right things, asking for feedback, inviting challenge, and reinforcing candor and openness. Those behaviors matter, of course, but they're not the deciding factor. People are looking for evidence, for moments where input changes the course of a discussion, for signs that it'll be worth the effort to bring forward something that may not land perfectly, for a reason to believe that speaking up will make a difference. That evidence is created in how you handle the conversation, not in how you frame the invitation. Let me say that again for you. That evidence is created in how you handle the conversation, not in how you frame the invitation. When that evidence is present, you experience a shift. Conversations deepen, and people stay in the discussion longer. When it's not present, politeness fills that space and limits what is shared. Over time, that creates distance between what leaders hear and what their teams are actually thinking. And that distance is where disengagement grows. Your coaching challenge. Think about a recent meeting where agreement came quickly, the kind of moment where everyone nodded and you moved on without resistance. In your next meeting, when that moment happens again, do something different. Pause the conversation and say, before we move on, I want to test something with you. What are we not saying right now? Then stop talking. Hold the silence. Let the squirmy discomfort show up. Do not rescue the moment, and do not soften the question. This can be harder than it sounds, especially if we're used to a faster pace to a solution. When someone offers a partial answer, stay with it longer than you normally would. Ask them what else they were considering but chose not to say. Let the room see that first layer thinking isn't enough. If nothing comes, name that too. Say what you were observing about the speed of agreement and your curiosity about what might be underneath it. After the meeting, reflect on what shifted, not just in what was said, but in how the room responded when you disrupted the well-worn pattern. That is where you start to regain access to what is actually in the room. If you're starting to wonder what's going unsaid in your leadership meetings, that's a conversation worth having. Reach out for a free exploratory executive coaching conversation at leslierohansi.com. Have a smooth day.